I feel more bad about the drugs than I do about the actual murders, to be honest with you. People ask me all the time about that. You know, how do you feel, what you did? It was me or them, or my friends, or my family. It's like being in the Marines. You know, you get an order to go, you go. I mean, that's it. We're not civilians anymore once we take that oath and look Cosa Nostra. I grew up in Boston, in the North End, in Little Italy. I mean, that was headquarters for organized crime at that time. And I grew up with all made guys, bosses, capos, you know. My father was involved with them since he was a teenager, you know, so I grew up around all these people. The Patriarca family. Raymond Patriarca was connected with the New York families. Well, my father was a bad guy. He was a tough guy. You know, he was always into the strip joints, after-hour clubs. You know, he was muscle and whatever else he had to be for them, you know. And my father was a good guy, very loyal to them. Grew up with all the, you know, made guys in his era. In my teens, I started hanging around with these guys. There was a few names that, you know, Larry Baioni was a capo there. He was very powerful in the family. And his crew was Johnny Cincotti, Rafi Chong. And we used to go down to the Bell Monopoly Pizza on Hanover Street. That was their headquarters. You know, we started hanging around them with them, you know. So we'd be young kids with, you know, $150 shoes on, dressed up every day. But also at that time, my family also was in the construction business. And I wanted to be a carpenter at that time. I really didn't want to be a gangster, you know. So I started going more to that with my uncles. And I think it was 20 years old, I got my first builder's license. And I had my own construction company at 21, you know, and I was following that up until 30 years old. I was staying away from all of that, you know. But I was still around them all the time. My father was still with them, so. You know, they were everyday faces in the neighborhood, these wise guys. You couldn't miss them. You know. What happened, the late 80s, the market crashed down in Cape Cod in my area. And, you know, the area was overbuilt. And at that time, I think I had 3 houses on Martha's Vineyard. I had a condo back in Boston, and I lost everything. So I came home in 90 with nothing, just my 2 kids and a minivan. You know, so the best thing I could do is I put a gun on my back and I went on the street. You know, the Luisi name was already in the neighborhood, my father and my family, you know. It was pretty easy for me to slide in there, you know. Then I started with the drugs, card clubs, bookmaking, loan sharking, and obviously the drugs. That was the big money maker for me.
And then November 6th, 1995 comes around.
Mm-hmm.
At the 99 restaurant in Charleston.
Well, you know, Damian Clementi was a neighborhood kid. Grew up in the North End. My father grew up with his father, Cleo. And, you know, Damian was moving around in the neighborhood. You know, my father kept going after him. And, you know, Cleo got pissed off over that. So there was a little, the night before the shooting, there was an altercation in a coffee shop in the North End, where Vinny and Damien and another fella beat up one of my father's guys, you know. And then right after that, they came to me, and I talked to my father after that, and my cousin Ricky Sarro, when we were just going to try to straighten it out. So they went to the 99 restaurant to stay out of the North End. I told them to stay out of the North End, Vinny and Damien. But they went to the restaurant. Who walks in the restaurant? My father, my brother Roman, Ricky and Anthony Sarro, Sonny Bishi all walk in the restaurant, you know, and the kids panicked, and Damien called his father. And his father came down with a gun. There were words went back and forth, and they started shooting. My family didn't have guns on them at that time, you know, so they were just basically slaughtered there. And that was devastating to the Luisi family, obviously. You know, but, you know, it was hard. You know, nobody wants to see their father and their brother gone and their cousins. You know, no matter what happened between me and my father on the street, he was still my father.
I mean, when that happened, when your father and brother gets murdered, was there a certain level of, I just need to get out of this? Like,
no,
no?
A certain level of what? What did you-
Well, I'm just like, I just got to leave this life alone. Let me just walk away from all this because look how close it's hitting the home at this point.
No, not at all. Actually, as soon as they got killed, I started putting everything together. I go, whatever my father had and my cousins, I just put everything together back in whole into the family. I was out the next day. There's nothing you could do. That's the life we chose to be in, my friend.
Well, on June 28th, 1999,
Yeah.
13 people get indicted for conspiracy to acquire and distribute cocaine.
Right.
And you're a part of that.
I'm part of that.
Do you remember the day you got busted?
Oh, yeah, I remember that day. That was all right. Yeah, I remember that day. Well, at that point, when I got arrested, I was going back to church, and a funny story. In March of 98, I had a spiritual experience with a demonic being that lasted for hours. And I went from being a die-hard gangster, loving that life, to the next day trying to see Christ.
Well,
To find out what happened to me that night. What happened is a demonic spirit came to me. I was fighting this thing for hours. He showed me people that I killed and people that were killed in the war, coming at me with all my evils. And then I felt at one point that they were trying to come in me, and that did happen. But, I told them that night that I don't want you, I want to be with Christ. But I still wasn't strong enough to fight it off, so I had to call the church. So they came up the house that night, prayed over the house, got rid of everything that the thing touched, and I took the host that night. And I gave my life over to Jesus Christ. But the problem was I'm still a boss of the street. We're still planning murders. We're selling drugs. But now I didn't want this anymore. I know it was wrong. I seen evil. I knew there was a devil and I knew it was a Jesus. So when you see the truth and it hits you in the face, what do you decide to do? So I knew a little to fight this thing off. But like I said, the church came. I took Christ. But nobody knew what happened. I couldn't go on the street and tell them I'm a Christian now. So I was still the boss and I still had to keep going. The crew had to make money. So now I'm praying to get out of this thing. I'm walking a toddling fence, going in and out, going to church every week. Still this haunting was going on during that time. And finally we got picked up. 15 months later, I got picked up. And when it happened, and they cuffed me and brought me to the car, I felt like a weight broke off my shoulders. And I felt great. And I was smiling when they put me in the car. And then they shuffled me off to prison.
look, so you come out of prison. I know you had a lot of profound stuff go on in there. But when you come out, then you're faced with more conflict. This is another example. Because I knew that with Joey Murillo and, Bugazzi, they was up on trial. Now, you said you was going to take the stand, but then you reneged. You said, no, I'm not going to take the stand. I'm not going to do that. And you didn't do that.
Right.
What happened with that?
When I got picked up on that charge, me and Joey got picked up the same day. I think they picked 11 of us up from Philly to Boston on those drug charges. I was fine. I said, all right, I'm going to get a break. I was looking at 10 to 12 if I took a plea. And I found out a good friend of mine was in there. He said, Bobby, he said, I heard there's murder indictments coming down. Did you talk to your lawyer? So I got my lawyer, Jack. And at that time, when I got pinched, Marty Bedreau was an AUSA in Boston. He had retired from there, and he went into my lawyer's firm. So 2 weeks later, when I told him what I heard, he came back with Marty.
Marty tells me, he said, Bobby, because the question with the murders, he says, yes, there are murder indictments coming down. And he said, listen, they got you cold. All your friends are flipping on you. He never told me which murder, it was. But he said, all your friends are flipping on you, and you're not going to get out. They're boasting about it up in the Fed's office that they got you. So he says, listen, I can get you the 10 to 12 now, But he said, when this grand jury is over, you're going up to the next grand jury with this murder, and you're going to get re-indicted and superseded on murder one. And he said, I can't get you out of that, Bobby. You know how the feds make their cases, they're 94, 96% rate of, winning because they got you all set up at the time, So I had to make a decision then what I wanted to do. He suggested that I talk to them and cut this off now and see if I could get a better deal for myself. And it took me 2-3 weeks before I really decided to do that because it was against my grain.
During the course of talking with them, with these 302s and all these meetings that I had with them, negotiations started breaking down with them. I didn't have it in my heart to be a rat. I really couldn't do it, Steve. It's something to sit up there and these guys that you love and you got to look at them, There was even one point they said, you want to go retroactive? We'll put you on the street with a wire and let you out. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to jam up my cousins and my friends and my guys and my crew. I can't do that.
I couldn't see myself doing it. But then again, I can't see myself doing life and all these other guys are going to go home. I was like a pincushion. Every time they picked a guy up there, they let him out to come and get me. I'll give him a deal. So I stopped all that. I went in and I talked to them. During the negotiations with the feds, I told them a lot of things, Vlad. I'm not going to lie. I said a lot of things I wish I didn't.
Well, you get out of prison in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, do they put you into the witness protection program?
Yes. They stuck me in Tennessee where there were no Italians, really. Nobody like me around. They stuck me down there. And I liked it in the beginning. I met a woman down there. I got married under my alias, Alonzo Esposito.
So the whole time when you're under witness protection, you can't see your family at all?
No, that would have to be planned. If they would even do that, to call them, you got to go through Washington. You just can't call them on the phone. Everything's protected. If you violate that, you get in trouble. So I was very careful of not breaking the rules down there. I might have cheated once or twice with some phone calls, but pretty much I did what they said to do. I wanted a new chance at life. That's why I went down there. I really thought I could do it. I didn't want to go back home to Boston at the time because I didn't know what I was going to turn into if I came back home or what was going to happen.